Hey, this is Tyler with Tjack Survival. I have a whole bunch of field review videos of knives, but I don't have a lot of what I would call the tabletop review. So I'm gonna knock out a whole bunch of tabletop reviews to give you the specs and some close-ups of all of the knives that I demo. All right, stay tuned. Alright guys, it's a real treat for me to bring you this one. This is probably one of my favorite Bark River knives. This is the Bushcrafter, and it's made in CPM 3V steel, which is a super steel in my opinion. The reason why I like this one so much, there's a myriad of reasons. Essentially, I like the sheath. Thank you, Mike, for putting a little place for me to put my striker. Nothing's worse for me than to have a bushcraft knife where I can't attach a striker to the sheath. One of the worst things for me is to buy a bushcraft knife that doesn't have a place for a striker. The problem is, you're gonna use a striker, it's a bushcraft knife. Where are you supposed to put it? So, thank you, Mike, for putting a place for me to hold the striker on the sheath. Now, most of my leather sheaths, I will modify them. When I modify them, essentially what I'll do with my leather sheaths is I'll put some stamps into them, change them up a little bit, and change up the design, and then I'll shape them so that they fit to my blade exactly. And essentially what that does is it kind of gives it a little bit of a suction grip, where it's sucking onto it and then it pops free. So the sheath is outstanding, the holder is outstanding, it grips high on the handle, which is nice because when they have the straps, I always cut those straps as a horrible thing. So this is a very well made bushcraft sheath. A little bit about the blade. It's got a nice micarta handle. I got a little bit of dirt on it from last time I used it. It's got a fairly solid 90-degree spine in the back, which, as you all know, you need for a good grip on the ferro rod. Gives me the ability to throw some sparks with that guy. Okay. So this is made of CPM 3V steel. It's similar to D2 steel. D2 is a tool steel as well, but D2 is a little harder to sharpen. And there's kind of arguments on whether the CPM 3V or the D2 steel is better. I personally think it depends on how you harden both of the steels, but they're kind of a toss-up. The good thing about this one is I have used white vinegar to try and purposely patina this blade. But as you can tell, it just won't take a patina. What that means is it won't rust. Now, any blade will rust eventually. There's no such thing as truly stainless steel, because truly stainless steel is too brittle to make into a knife. So it's kind of like, how good do you want the blade to cut? How robust and springy do you want the blade to be? But how stainless do you want it to be? Because you can't have one without the other. I'm sorry, you can't have one exclusively over the other. So the coolest thing about this blade, the real main thing that makes it awesome is this. A Scandinavian grind is basically one angle. Now, prior to the 1900s, we didn't have machines to give us a flat ground Scandinavian grind. There was nothing there to make it perfectly flat, it just didn't exist. So what we did was, we had a single grind, but it was a convex ground Scandinavian grind, which basically means there's one angle, but it starts down a slope on that angle, and at the tip there's a little bit of a slope too. This is good because it makes the blade stronger. That convex at the very tip, we might even argue that it's a micro convex, keeps the tip from rolling. So if you're coming in at a really hard angle and you're turning on it, it's not going to roll the tip. So the combination of a super steel CPM 3V and a convex ground Scandinavian cut or Scandinavian grind makes this a phenomenal knife. It's ground the way that the original Sami people would have done in Finland prior to the early 1900s, late 1800s, because that's the technology that they had. Ironically, it's a better knife. The reason that they switched over to that flat ground knife is, yes, it's sharper, but not for as long. And the reason they switched over is because it was easier to run a bunch of blades through a machine and spit out a bunch of flat ground knives than it was to create this harder to make technique where they have to, by hand, do each angle. So there's the initial curve, the flat ground, and then the tertiary curve. If you can look right up the tip of that blade, and it'll be a little bit hard to show on camera, but if you can see, there's no solid angles. It is a convex ground Scandinavian grind knife. I've used this to make traps and fishing handles and bow drills and hand drill kits, and it's just this really tough knife. You can really get in and dig and turn, you can get in and pry, you can really pull on it to get your chest lever cutting, and it just works really nice. It has a really big hole here in the back for a lanyard. I only like lanyards on really big knives so that I can keep control, or really small knives so that I don't lose them because they're not big enough for my hand. But since this fits my hand almost perfectly, I really like not having a lanyard on this type of knife. Alright, so that's been a quick review, or a quick discussion if you will, on the Bark River Knives CPM 3V Bushcrafter. If you want one, I'll leave a link in the bottom. If you have any questions, please leave me some questions in the comments. Hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends, and thank you for watching Tjack Survival.